Expedition 30 is the first long-duration spaceflight for most of the International Space Station's current crew members. But the group has on-orbit experience that dates back to before Expedition 1. Dan Burbank is from Central Connecticut, born in Manchester and raised in Tolland. He became interested in space and astronomy and science when the first men landed on the moon just 1 week before his 8th birthday. But a bigger impression was made a year later when he saw the movie The Boatniks.
It was this silly story about this fellow who graduates from the Coast Guard Academy and goes to a ship and has this whole series of misadventures. But from that point on, as long as I can remember, I wanted to be in the Coast Guard. I wanted to do search and rescue.
He didn't get into the Coast Guard Academy on his first try, but after 2 years as a physics major at Fairfield University, he did, and learned almost immediately that Coast Guard officers don't do search and rescue on small boats, as he had dreamed of doing. But helicopter pilots did, and that became his new goal. Burbank graduated with a Bachelor of Science in Engineering and spent 1.5 years assigned to a Coast Guard cutter before going to flight school and learning to fly planes and helicopters. After his first tour, he earned a Master's in Aeronautical Science from Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University and completed the training to become an engineering officer, and did that job while still flying on subsequent assignments. But he was inspired when fellow Coast Guard officer Bruce Melnick became an astronaut, and Burbank applied 3 times before being selected as an astronaut in 1996. He was part of the 2000 shuttle mission that prepared the Zvezda module for the station's first permanent crew, performed 1 spacewalk on the 2006 shuttle mission that delivered the P3-P4 truss, and then spent 3 years teaching at the Coast Guard Academy before retiring as a captain and beginning training for his first long-duration spaceflight, which he likens to the work that drew him to the Coast Guard as a boy.
You're not doing a mission with the idea that you're going to save a life. You're going to do a mission with the idea that you're going to save the future of a species, and that this is where humans belong. I think humans, by their very nature, are outward-looking, and I think it's in our destiny to leave this planet ultimately and to go other places.
Russian Air Force Colonel Anton Shkaplerov was born and raised in Sevastopol, the home of the Russian Navy's Black Sea Fleet. Though his father worked on a submarine, Shkaplerov became fascinated with spaceflight as a boy and felt that the Air Force was the best path to cosmonaut, so he joined a local aviation club.
I started flying planes at 15. At 16, I was flying them on my own. I was flying over my hometown where I was born. Everything was so familiar and pleasant to the eye. So then I realized that after 2 years of flying, when I was in high school, the choice was right.
After high school, Shkaplerov went to the Kachinsk Air Force Pilot School in Volgograd and graduated as a pilot engineer. He flew MiG-29s while attending the Zhukovsky Air Force Engineering School, then spent 6 years as a pilot instructor while also flying as a member of the Sky Hussars, a flight demonstration squadron. Shkaplerov was selected as a cosmonaut in 2003.
If we do not study the space, we will stalemate, and we have to move on. We have to study new planets, new horizons, new resources, new energy resources, for example. Maybe there is some other types and forms of life on other planets, so why not?
Anatoly Ivanishin, a lieutenant colonel in Russia's Air Force, is a native of Irkutsk, one of the largest cities in Siberia. He spent a lot of time in various sports and study groups as a boy, and although his mother says he always wanted to be a cosmonaut, Ivanishin remembers wanting to be a fighter pilot, and that's why he joined a skydiving club as a young teenager.
At the time, it was the only sky-related activity available for me. We didn't have at the time an opportunity in my city to fly any kind of airplanes. So I did my first jump when I was 14.
He didn't get into military pilot school on his first attempt, so Ivanishin spent a year majoring in aviation design at the Irkutsk Polytechnic Institute before starting his pilot training at the Chernigov Higher Military Aviation School. He graduated in 1991, the same year the Soviet Union collapsed. And although he flew the MiG-29 and Su-27 operationally, he felt he wasn't getting the experience he wanted. So he took classes at Moscow State University in economics, statistics, and information theory. He graduated in 2003 with plans for a career as a software developer, but gave that up when he was selected as a cosmonaut that very same week.
Human beings are too curious creatures, and they will not remain for a long time on low Earth orbit. They will go further and further to the universe, because to go further we will need new solutions, new materials, new spacecrafts, and the International Space Station we have today is the right place to prove solutions.
Oleg Kononenko was born in Charjo in the Central Asian Republic of Turkmenistan, the son of a Soviet military officer.
Parents cared for me, loved me. My parents took care of my education. They always supported all my endeavors. They knew what I wanted. I wanted to be a cosmonaut. My father said that if you really want it, then work on it.
Kononenko joined a model rocket club, read about the lives of cosmonauts, and decided he would design rockets as well as fly on them. He earned a degree in mechanical engineering at the Kharkov Aviation Institute and was qualified as a patent specialist and inventor. Winning second prize in a national engineering contest won him the attention of the Russian Space Agency. He went to work at the Central Design Bureau in Samara in 1988, became chief designer there 6 years later, and 2 years after that was selected as one of its cosmonaut candidates. Following his basic training in Star City, Kononenko was assigned to the Cosmonaut Corps of the Rocket Space Corporation Energia. He made his first trip to the International Space Station in 2008 as the Expedition 17 flight engineer and performed 2 spacewalks.
I believe sooner or later the humankind will have to leave the confines of Earth and will fly to the moon, to Mars, build bases there. The experts that are saying that the gain will be minimal, I do not think they realize how useful it can be. I believe those bases are going to provide a huge advantage to the humankind.
Andrei Kuipers was born and raised in Amsterdam and credits his interest in a career in space to his grandmother and her gift of 3 books in the Perry Rhodan science fiction series when he was just past the age of 10.
That was the trigger for me, because I got into this world of astronauts and spaceships and alien life forms, and that was in the time that I also saw the cars on the moon and the Apollo flights.
That adventure and the beauty in the pictures from space had him hooked, and the feelings were intensified when Europeans started flying in space while he was earning his medical degree at the University of Amsterdam. As an officer in the Royal Netherlands Air Force Medical Corps, he studied the role of spatial disorientation of pilots in accidents involving high-performance aircraft, and the usefulness of knowing about what happens to people in weightlessness added to his desire to fly in space himself. Later in his career, Kuipers did research on high-performance pilots at the Aerospace Medical Institute and then the Institute for Applied Physics, which led to a role in preparing and monitoring on-orbit physiological experiments developed by the European Space Agency. After some 8 years working for the agency, he was selected as an ESA astronaut in 1999 and made his first trip to the International Space Station in 2004 during the Expedition 8 to 9 crew exchange.
It's part of our nature to explore, and after the deserts and the oceans and underwater and then the air, the space is just the next one, and people will always be curious and go there themselves to look themselves.
Don Pettit was born in Silverton, Oregon, a farming and logging town south of Portland in the Willamette Valley. He remembers being excited when he saw John Glenn go into space, but he focused on his own adventures, exploring the world around him.
On weekends, I would spend the time in my dad's shop making all kinds of little scientific inventions, and then when I was in college, I would do the same thing, and then I became an engineer in terms of my schooling, but really a scientist by profession, and I think by heart an explorer.
After high school in Silverton, he went to Oregon State for a Bachelor of Science in Chemical Engineering, and then to the University of Arizona for his Ph.D. in the same field. But in both places, he took as many electives outside the field as he could, in everything from economics to glassblowing, to satisfy his curiosity. After college, he spent more than 12 years at the Los Alamos National Laboratory and worked on NASA-related projects including fluid flow and materials processing in reduced gravity, and the Space Station Freedom redesign, before being selected as an astronaut in 1996. Pettit performed 2 spacewalks during his first trip to the International Space Station as a flight engineer on Expedition 6, and was one of the first 2 Americans to land in a Soyuz spacecraft when he came home from that mission in a Russian vehicle because shuttles were grounded after the loss of Columbia. He returned as a mission specialist on a 2008 space shuttle mission that delivered 7 tons of supplies and equipment to prepare the station for a permanent crew of 6, the kind of step forward that Pettit thinks is necessary for humans to move beyond low Earth orbit.
If you're not willing to take the risk, that you as a society will not be advancing that field, and you'll be sitting back watching a different country who's willing to take the risk advance that field.